Hey Jay, can you hear me okay? Hmm. I can't hear you, Jay. It's like it's not just your mask, it's like it's garbled almost. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Oh, I can see your lips move. I don't hear anything. I'll lean closer. I'm sorry to be such a pain, Jay. Jay, if you can hear me, it's like I can hear the background sounds more than I can hear you. So I'm wondering if is it coming through the star thing?
Audio. You had audio.
There it is. There it is. You did something.
Yes. So for everyone not in the room, are you hearing me right now, Robin?
I am. Thank you. Good work.
So the technical glitch was my foot kicked the plug to the owl. I'm doing everything on the computer and didn't check below the table. So
No. Good work.
So everyone, you haven't missed a thing other than me frantically fiddling with the computer. So there you have it.
Well done.
All right. Sorry about that, everyone. Dave, back to you.
Yeah, back to the December 3rd, 2021 long-range planning meeting. Now that we have a connection and a quorum, let's begin. The first item on the agenda is an update to the downtown committee report we tabled from last meeting. Get a quick look at it, and is there an introduction or a overview? Yeah.
Sure.
Take it away.
Right. So we're going to try to do just a really short overview of the downtown plan that was submitted by the Ad Hoc Downtown Committee on October 20th, I believe. And we just want to hit a couple of things that, I think that the Long Range Planning Committee would be interested in, just so you know, the Long Range Planning Committee did reviews the original concepts of not the downtown ad hoc committee, but the original report that was done as part of the Downs work, talking about the downtown district. And so this committee is doing, the ad hoc committee is taking it one step further. And this is the original charge from the council to provide guidance on the elements of a community-based downtown to both the council and the developers of the Downs. And the council charge specifically required or asked for a schematic design and a conceptual layout, which is included in the report. The one thing that the council charge originally talked about was maybe doing some financial priorities. And the committee did not do that simply because there weren't the resources and the time to do that. So that was put on hold, and it's really a next level phase.
Just a real quick question about the ad hoc committee itself.
Mhm.
Having delivered this charge, is it now done, or is it continuing to do other work, or?
It's done.
It's done, okay.
And so the council, that's one of the council's questions is what's the next step?
Got it, okay, thanks.
And I don't think they've done anything more than, correct me if I'm wrong, accept the plan and say,
Right.
thank you. All right, so Jake, I should let me point out. The committee members, I included Travis Kennedy, who actually is on the SEDCO board. He was the chair. It included residents, somebody from the Chamber of Commerce, and it was a nice, really diverse group of folks. And I would say it had some folks that had, as far as I know, have not been involved in town committees before. So I think it was a really nice, diverse committee. And the council liaisons, Tom Hall was the staff person assigned. I did some help towards the end and wrote the report based on the committee's work. John Cloutier was the town council representative, as well as Jonathan Anderson. And they were at each of the meetings. And just, we got to give hats off to them. They really did meet every 2 weeks for more than 6 months, I think almost 9 months. So they really worked hard. So I just want to give a hats off to the committee members. So the key elements of Scarborough's future downtown that the committee really spent a lot of time thinking about. One, authenticity. What does it mean to be a downtown in Scarborough? So they did spend a lot of time on that, and you'll see some of that when we look at the findings. Certainly signage and streetscape was a big discussion. Some of those elements were in the original downtown plan that was part of the original TIF, but they went further and talked about how that signage and streetscape might get developed. Talking about gathering spaces, that was a really fundamental piece for the committee, and they talk about it in terms of collision points. You want something that people gather and they run into people and, new conversations and let's go get coffee. So that these collision points that they discussed were really important to them. Obviously, transportation, major concern, mostly with regard to how do you connect the Downs piece to the rest of Oak Hill, which is what the downtown district says will be our downtown of the future. It's a combination of the Downs and Oak Hill. And then, they did talk about some themes. What are the themes that they want to see represented? And we'll see a little bit of that in a second. And they also wanted to talk about what's the success? How do you measure success in a downtown area? And so those are some of the themes they started out trying to work through. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you go back for a second? And this was just one illustration of the grandstand, which I'll talk about in a second. So that's the end of the grandstand, and they brought out the overhang, so it created a covered area.
Is that, and this is more detailed, but is that necessarily bringing out the overhang, or is that cutting back some of the building? Or is that undetermined?
I think it's undetermined,
Okay,
but I
fair
think
enough.
originally this drawing was based on bringing it out, leaving the building alone and bringing that out.
Okay.
So this was, the work of committee advice to a consultant that was hired by the Downs, Goody Clancy, which is an architectural and planning consultant with a pretty great reputation in terms of doing these types of things, and they were out of the Boston area. They took input from the committee, and this was the draft that was presented to the committee. And, if I can walk you through a couple of things here. One, they are looking at,
Just to orient, I believe
Thank you.
Route 1 is on the right-hand side of the page, Payne Road is on the left-hand side of the page. So we're looking at the plan, not north to south as we normally think of it. And so Payne Road is to the bottom of the page.
right, and take a look at the grandstand right there in the center. So when they first started out, I think some of the original drawings of the downtown area really had the downtown oriented really toward the length of the grandstand and going out, and a really, really big town village green, if you will. And it's one of the things that the consultants really came back and said is it really makes more sense to have the downtown oriented toward maybe one of the ends of the grandstand. And there's many issues there, but one of the primary issues certainly was the width of the grandstand just begins to dominate the entire physical aspect of the downtown. And so they really felt like reorienting this downtown area with the village green, oriented toward one of the edges of the grandstand really made some sense to them for a variety of reasons, one of which is the scale. But they also wanted a little bit of an orientation toward the road coming through, and that would give them, number one, some visibility. I think one of the things that the Downs and others who are involved in downtown development have been a little worried about is if you tuck that downtown so deep into the Downs that you have to, make 25 turns to get there, then it really can disappear. It doesn't have the impact that I think they wanted. So this was one iteration to bring it out, oriented so you have the Scarborough Downs main road going through. You've got the village green, and we'll talk about this in a second. The village green was another area that they spent a lot of time thinking about. And the important piece for them was to understand that the village green is not a park. It's not going to be Memorial Park. It is a space that you should be able to see somebody across on the other side and be able to say, hey, Peter, I see you there. What's going on? So it's just under an acre is what that green space is. And so there was a lot of deliberation about that, and you'll see in the findings. In the end, the committee agreed that green space has a very specific function. It's not necessarily a place that you're going to do concerts and other things. There may be some smaller types of work done, but it's really to serve as that space where there are collision points and picnic tables and things like that. So this is the general layout that was presented to the committee, and they spent a great deal of time talking about this, and they felt like this was a good start. This is not the final version. It's going to be an iterative process, and it's at some point the Downs will need to come forward with a master plan for the downtown area, and this is the beginning part of that. This is really feeding into what that master plan is going to look like. And I think the other thing that they wanted to point out is they really feel like you've got the smaller downtown uses here, but they also want an anchor. And they're talking about like a grocery store or something like that does have parking around it. So the idea is there could be parking You go to the grocery store, you leave your car, and then you walk through the downtown area. So that's just sort of a general orientation.
So Karen, is it really more about sort of trying to identify those mix of uses and sort of the interplay of them rather than the actual final layout and design? Is that sort of?
I think it was more about understanding how does the grandstand fit in, and they did have a specific subcommittee about the grandstand and understanding what it could be, the green and the general sense of how it's going to get oriented within the area. The committee specifically stayed away from prescribing, hey, there should be 5 restaurants and 25 small businesses. They really felt that was beyond the scope of their work, maybe at some point, but that's really a marketing and function of, the town and the downs figuring out, how to market the area. But at this point, they decided to stay away from prescribing what those spaces would be and talk more about the interplay of different types of spaces. And so this grocery anchor, that's probably a 50 to 80,000 square foot building is what they're saying. So that's why the scale is a little bit larger there. And this does show on the other side, the sports and recreation, the EDGE project, which I think they're just now coming back and reviewing and starting that process over about what the EDGE complex is going to be. And then what you also see is this ring, I believe that's about a 1/4 mile radius around the center of the concept.
Has developer determined that there is demand for grocery anchor, that they would be able to market that property?
They feel yes.
Okay.
They feel, and I will tell you that I do know from our folks at Hannaford.
There already is, there,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
there already
That's what I've
is
heard.
a grocery plan,
Yes.
available and approved for the Payne Road entrance property. So that would be
That's
2 groceries.
Well,
So Costco's talking
Yeah.
about going at the Payne Road. I mean, that's publicly known,
Okay,
so we
good.
can say that.
okay,
Um,
this is a.
But this is a more
grocery.
traditional grocer that I haven't received anything, but it's my understanding there are ongoing conversations and they've been, the Downs team has mentioned that at public meetings. So I think I'm free to say that they're having conversations with grocers. So
Gotcha, just wanted
that's
to get a sense of that.
as far as I think I can speak to.
Yeah,
So the one thing that stands out to me here is that everything that I've ever seen before had the grandstand and the windows
Right.
overlooking a greenery area.
Right.
Now it's overlooking residences?
well, it's still over on the other side, it's still
So
looking over.
this would be the
Civic
track
Retail
area, the current, right,
Yeah.
yep, that's the
Yeah.
current track area, yep.
So they're gonna build houses in there. So I mean, to me, that just totally, well, and again, that's personal opinion, but it just goes against everything I've ever seen about the downtown area and the grandstand.
And
And
so what-
the council is like, what? Just,
Okay.
I don't know.
Right.
It just
And so
surprises me.
yeah, so they did flip it. So you're still seeing civic retail and restaurants and things on this side. But what the change was really reorienting where that village green is. And
Which
again,
previously was sorted out here, correct?
no.
Or was it?
it was
Okay,
there,
okay,
yeah.
I'm still, yeah.
And the reorienting of the grandstand, or moving grandstand, reorienting of the uses around it, again, was a reflection of scale of the building and really feeling like Goody Clancy really recommended that this is.
Well, and I guess that was sort of my initial question, Karen, is, so did the downtown committee sort of say, yep, if there's going to be a village green, this is where it should be? Or really is their recommendation, yes, a village green of roughly an acre should be somewhere in this vicinity with this mix of uses around it, and not necessarily saying, okay, Goody Clancy, here's one idea, that looks okay. So I just want to be clear, particularly when it comes to the planning board, Are they really looking at the recommendation coming from the downtown committee as, yep, we've already considered this location and that's the one? Or, hey, here's one idea, that looks
Yep.
generally okay, but we know there's a lot more discussion to be
Right.
had and other opinions to be heard. So
Right.
I just want to be clear about what that committee's thought is.
Yeah, so the committee felt, first of all, the size of the green
Mhm.
and the village green, this orientation made sense to them. They understood why it got moved down, and really talking about the incorporation of really a main street in there. They have some findings with regard to how traffic should be slowed down within that specific area. But it really is an iteration. So they gave Goody Clancy a series of comments about what they think the downtown needed to be. Goody Clancy came up with this orientation, and the committee said, okay, this makes sense to us. This is a good beginning piece. It is not the final, but it was a reasonable representation of some of the concepts that the committee came up with.
Karen, why isn't there more mixed use in there? Because that's really what we were looking to see, more open space and more mixed use.
Right. So they did not discuss those components. They
Okay.
said, we understand, we want restaurants, we want all those things that I think people conceive of as a downtown. But they did not get into, like, we don't have an assessment of square footage, like, what does this really represent? And I think part of that is, again, it's an iterative process. And so they are still refining this as well.
Mhm.
And I think what the committee did decide to do is say, good base, good starting point for discussion. And it illustrates several of the fundamentals that we talked about during the piece.
And are
So
those white, I'm sorry, are those white things, is that parking?
This,
Yes, some of that's
that would
parking,
appear
yeah.
parking is.
And in between where it says civic and or retail dining, that's parking?
No, I think those are uses.
So the only real parking for larger activities, and by larger, I mean more than 10,
Yep.
Right.
is next to the grocery store.
Yeah, but I think that's one of the iterations that they have to figure out. That's going to come. They talked about having more
Yes.
parking, more pods of parking
Because it
outside.
has been a constant discussion in all of the rest of the construction.
Right.
On-street parking versus parking inside the development. And we've seen the need for more parking for visitors.
Right.
But the question I have, where it says residential at the back of the grandstand, was it discussed at any point that would be the place where the recreation and fields would be? Because the grandstand, as you know, people can sit in the grandstand and look out. And in this case, they would be looking out at houses, and the houses would be looking out at a 3-story giant.
Or the
Right.
intent is that the grandstand is not gonna be purposed as a grandstand. And other stuff is gonna be going on.
Well, that was
That's
the
my
question,
question.
too, is that it was more sort of
Yeah, there's gonna
symbolic.
be a
Right.
lot of, I think,
What- what is
reconstruction.
Something
Yeah,
else
let's move
happening.
on to the next
Yeah.
slide. 'cause
I
they-
just want to do a
Yeah,
quick time
time
check.
check.
It's 8:30. We talked about this being a 10 or 15
Right.
minute update, which
Right.
we know it's there's a lot of questions. So
Yeah.
just to keep us mindful, I know Marvin did throw his hand up earlier, so.
And I had a question after Marvin too, so.
Well, my question was, grandstand is what is the grandstand going to be?
So
So, but
they,
and mine's a little different, then, so I'm not sure if we want to cover that one now or. I can
well,
throw
go
it.
ahead, because that grandstand is on the next slide, so.
Okay, so the one thing I would say about that, and thinking of the comp plan, thinking about our role as a long-range planning committee, is sort of a road interconnectivity.
Mhm.
So right now, you've got a connection via Scarborough Downs out to Route 1, a connection out to Payne Road, you get a connection down to Hanks Parkway. Is there gonna be anything to connect this into what is currently the downtown core, which is sort of Sawyer Road and then into Memorial Park and all that?
So that is the question. This committee did not other than saying those connections need to be made, but they
Okay.
did not do it.
Gotcha, okay, because that was an element of the long range plan that we talked a bit about in terms of making sure that
Absolutely.
we have more cross-street connectivity, especially in any emerging downtown areas. So it
In,
was
in,
fun.
in the planning board has essentially approved a connection to Sawgrass, but it's a trail connection and a utility easement. It could be, I suppose, done for bicycles, but it's not meant to be a car.
Right,
I think that
right
could-
now, the zoning doesn't allow for a connection
Right.
through to Sawyer
Right.
Street.
Right.
Yep.
And I think there could be an entire committee focused just on
Yeah,
that.
so that's,
Those-
it's been
that
identified, but.
Exactly, exactly.
Jay, in response to your comment about it's a half hour, however long it's been, and we gave it 10 or 15 or 20 minutes. Is there any gun to
No.
our head? Can we stop? I'm not suggesting we do, I'm just saying, could we stop here, pick this discussion up in a month's time and not?
Well, I
leave?
think Karen has one more slide, I
Yeah.
think, just to
This-
go over the findings, and then
Yeah,
that'll be
and-
sort of the update of what.
Yeah, and then I think we can come back and
Yes, I
have
think there
a
will be
deeper
more discussion.
discussion
I
about
would
it.
imagine the council will look for future discussions on lots of different things.
Yeah. But yes, there's no gun to our head, there's no next step, although I'm not sure when they're planning on coming back in
Right.
with their master.
So maybe you
plan.
just want to run through the
Yep.
findings
Well,
real quick, and we'll.
These are just a quick summary of the findings. There's a little bit more detail in the report. So most important, the downtown area within the Downs is not a downtown for the Downs. It is a downtown for the community. And there are several aspects where that comes up. So the Goody Clancy depiction of downtown, which is what we just looked at, it's a great start. And that's how they phrase it. It's a start of looking at the process. Important to understand the village green is essential to promote the connectivity, but it's not a park. So, it's not going to be programmed like Memorial Park, and it is about the connections between people who are in the downtown. The connectivity from the Downs to the balance of downtown is critical, balance of downtown being Oak Hill. And whether that's focused on, Route 1 and, ensuring the sidewalks and street canvas and things like that, there's a whole lot to that particular piece, which is why I think that it could be a whole committee in and of itself. Zoning for the Crossroads was really determined to be pretty reasonable for what they want to accomplish. That doesn't mean they might not want to tweak some design standards here or there. That certainly came up, but at this point, the Downs did not discuss any specific changes to the ordinance. But I think that's one of the things that they're looking at for some collaboration. But the Crossroads district in itself is a really good, flexible, broad zone for them. Housing in the core of the project is common sense. It supports downtown uses and development. So that's where the downtown committee decided to leave it. They did not put in there should be X amount of housing within the quarter mile. They certainly discussed some of that, but they felt like that was better left to the next phase of the development. Plus there's some work that will go on with respect to that. And then, really focus on, at some point, there's going to be some ongoing management structure will be needed. And whether that's a collaboration between the town and the Downs, or it's, the Downs just doing marketing, that needs to be decided. And there are a couple of questions that were presented to the council, like, how do you want to move this forward? What's the collaboration method that you want with them? And that's really the essence of the report. So I think what the report does is lay a foundation for some concepts, but there's a lot more work that needs to be done, over time and as part of both the planning board process comprehensive plan and other things. There's more work to be done. What's not up there is that discussion of I think I skipped over it. They spent a lot of time in the grandstand. The result is the committee strongly believes that the grandstand should be repurposed, saved to the extent it can. They recognize that there's some feasibility that needs to be done on how that works and how it can get repurposed. But maybe it was me who did that.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, but they really spent some time trying to understand the iconic nature of the downtown of the grandstand and how that gives the Downs portion of the downtown some authenticity, if you will, some connection to Scarborough and history. And the one comment that was negative about the grandstand is that feeling. We have an architect who was actually one of the committee members, and he really felt that the width, the horizontal width, just would be too much for the downtown. And I think that's one of the comments that Goody Clancy took into account and said, all right, well, there are ways to incorporate it without it being, this major building that overtakes everything else. And I think that's it. And I think there's a lot more discussion to be had. You could talk about any one of these points, in terms of moving it forward. But I think that's the next step in understanding how the council wants to move forward. FYI, I think for SEDCO, simply because we do marketing and other types of general economic development activities as part of our normal day-to-day activities, we're going to look through the downtown plan at our December meeting and start focusing on, all right, well, here are some ideas that make perfect sense, and we would begin to incorporate into our, whatever we do strategically with respect to marketing and signage and those types of things.
There seems to be a lot of open space. There's less definition than I sort of thought, not knowing anything really about it. Who has it? And if I'm wrong, I'll be the first to admit it. Who has the authority to fill in and to finalize? The other thing, is it the town council? Is it the developer? Who is it?
Well, partly, the first answer to that is the planning board, because they're the one who's going to review and approve the master plan for each of these sections. And we've done three, I can't remember.
1, 2, 3. 3
master plans. And they're
The downtown will be a single master plan?
yes. Yes.
Presumably, they could incorporate.
And some of that open space is wetlands.
Yeah.
And so we already know what the limits are of development.
So the planning board will consider whatever the final iteration is of this and approve it as a whole.
As a master plan, and then it's likely the developer will then subdivide it into chunks for us to take a look at.
And
Is there a timing on the master plan or?
Not necessarily.
not necessarily.
Just
There's
curious, I mean,
So I mean, just keep in mind, there's a lot of collaboration between the developer and town, but ultimately this is private property
Yeah.
owned
Yes,
by
gonna make that
Crossroads
point.
Holding.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
their responsibility to submit an application that's consistent with our zoning ordinance. And so I think there's certain things that they, as Karen said, they may need to ask for. There's currently a discussion with council around growth management ordinance, and so there's some discussion there. So that's an ask of the town. There may be some future discussion, Karen sort of highlighted it. Maybe there's some of our performance standards or design standards around street acceptance or what have you that may need to get looked at. But other than that, right now, there's current zoning on private property, and
Yeah.
there's a process to go through. And so, yes, the planning board ultimately reviews and approves, but it's the developer's job to demonstrate that they're meeting the standards that have already been set
Right.
forth. So it's,
My question, Jay, is really more,
Yeah.
has a developer given a sense of, hey, we're expecting to submit a master plan, end of 2022 or something like that.
They'd like to do it yesterday.
Yeah.
But that being said, just so to remind folks, or if you don't know, we are in the process right now, we being the council, of hiring our own consultant. We've got RFP out. We've had a couple of responses to it. And one of the scope of work is downtown development and what's going on with the downtown. Of her, an outside consultant to be our consultant on this.
That sounds great, because of the downtown, that it was emphasized in what you said, Karen, that it's not for the downs, it's for. the
Right.
town.
Exactly.
That's part of that CEA that we've got, that
Right.
we're partners
Mhm.
with them on it, so we want our own input, and from a new, so-called neutral, but representing us, I think that's not neutral, but someone who can come in and say, this looks like it would work, this doesn't, this makes no damn sense, or whatever it is that comes out of it.
Does the zoning ordinance need to have this downtown component added into it if it's not already there?
No, the zoning,
Conceptually, it's
No.
the zoning would allow for this type of
Right.
development.
Right.
It would frankly encourage this
It
type of
encourages it,
development.
right.
It requires it.
But I think the collaboration goes deep in a lot of different areas, and certainly one of the issues was, what's the streetscape going to look like, and what's the signage going to look like? Is it going to incorporate like the Marsh logo that we have on all of our other signage? So there are all of these little pieces that are part of making this feel like Scarborough, part of Scarborough's downtown, not just the Downs. And
Right.
some of that goes to me, and I'm being critical, I'm sorry, in advance, sounds like, missing the forest for the trees. I mean, there's a substantial idea that's being implemented here. And signage, I think is very important and critically important, and can do exactly what you just said. However, it also can be just dressing up something that wasn't considered
Right.
whole in whole.
Right.
To fill gaps or plug
Right.
holes or something like that.
Robin has her hand.
Yeah, I think we're getting in the weeds
Yeah.
here. We're getting a little
Yeah.
bit more, there's a lot more study to be done here, and this
Oh,
is
yeah.
just a kickoff. So let's see what Robin has to do and has to say, and then let's move on into the next agenda item.
Thank you. Jean Marie sort of answered my question. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So my thought was, how does the town get to incorporate our, for lack of a better term, I guess I'll put it, our comp plan sort of principles into this, because having, I think, an outside consultant will be key, because, I'm not sure that this plan that we heard about today is completely holistic with respect to, it sounds holistic with respect to people, but I'm not, with respect to resources, both natural and man-made, I'm not sure that we got all the kinks worked out. So if maybe next time we get together, we could hear about how the town's consultant, or how the RFP is being written for the consultant to integrate into this plan, the larger, more holistic values of Scarborough.
Robin, we've already sent the RFP out, and I can forward it to you. I don't know why I can't forward it to you, but let me double check on that.
Okay.
If you wanted to see it.
And just one real quick comment, you
Yeah, I
mentioned
was
that
gonna
there's
say,
going to be
give
some
us a
sort of
long range
management
plan.
structure put together. I just highly recommend that we have an LRPC member or representative on that.
that
Because
makes sense.
I think we've said before, we're the stewards of the plan, as it were.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that we've talked about will end up being
Yeah.
touched upon by whatever comes out.
And just so folks can get oriented, what's already been approved, if you take a look at that strange looking building that kind of looks like a pitchfork almost, that's
This guy.
this guy. That is
yeah.
assisted living residence. Actually gradations leading to full memory care. So that, and to the other side where it says Front Runner Park, all of those buildings, construction's been approved. Front Runner Park itself is a gravel wetland that's being constructed also to have places where people can sit, can walk, can play. So all of that is already on the books. And there's only one area left.
It's already physically there.
It's already, it's, yeah.
Yeah.
There's only one area left that is still to have construction on it that we approved as part of the last subdivision. So when you ask about when things are gonna start, as a developer, they've got pretty much what they're going to get
Up to the edge.
up to the edge there, up to the grandstand area.
Similar, right, Rachel, I think the innovation district is effectively approved at this point too. or-
It's effectively sold out, yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, it all hasn't come before us, but
Right,
but all of it's in the works,
got
as
it, okay.
far as I know.
So we're looking
Yes.
here at the zone that has not yet been
Correct.
given a master plan, given
Yep.
something.
Correct.
Yeah.
The long range, Colette's gonna send everyone what went out for consultants. It's not a formal RFP, apparently. I don't know, but anyway, what went out, so you can see what we're looking for.
So yeah, so like I said, this is intended as a first step. Everybody knows there's a lot more work to do on all pieces. And their focus was pretty narrow in just getting us started. And I think they outlined some philosophical points. And the findings are a great platform to go to the next level. And I think that's where they will take up some of the more detailed work that needs to be done.
So we'll stay tuned and keep our ear to the ground about what's going on, but
Yeah.
be expecting to have some feedback in the future. All
Yes.
right, let's move on.
Our
Discussion.
15-minute update.
Yeah.
Into the really fun stuff. Who doesn't love spreadsheets, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, what did I just do? I don't want this.
Mr. Chair, well, I need to leave at 9:15, I meant to tell you that earlier, I have a 9:30, I have to be there.
And I'm a 9:30, so.
And I know just,
Yeah.
I always set the meetings for 2 hours on the Zoom thing, just so so it doesn't shut off right at 9:30. I do know that we end at 9:30. I just want, so you don't freak out when I send out a meeting that says till 10. I know we're always gunning for 9:30, so.
15 minutes.
All right, so I think I redlined where we last left off. Do you want me to jump
Yeah,
in?
go
Just
right back, yeah.
just a
Go
real
right
quick
back.
reminder.
Yeah.
What we're doing is we took all the sort of the work plan from the comprehensive plan. We distilled it down. Now what we're trying to do is make a work plan from the implementation table. So the first step in that is to identify who are going to be the leads on certain items. Staff went through, took a cut, and identified a number of items. It's hard to do. Uh-oh, that's not what I wanted. Anyway, without digging into it,
That's
a
it.
number of items that clearly one committee would be sort of the lead on. And we've sent that out. You've all had a chance to review that. We're happy to hear if we went astray anywhere, but so far we haven't heard any. But then we had to host these last 50 or 60 or 70 that we had multiple committees. And we said, well, we've got to figure out, there's got to be a lead. So that's really what we're doing, is going through where staff sort of, so the last one we left off with was vision number 3. Should I try to make this bigger so people can read it? Would that be easier?
Would it help to shut the blinds at all, or?
Oh, yeah.
You tell me. I'm
It's on the
gonna,
back.
how do I, let's zoom. Oh wait, this is what I wanted. Zoom. Zoom. All right. So where we ended last meeting was vision. This comes out of vision 3, which you remember we have 5 overarching visions, and ensure that development ordinances encourage attractive mixed-use centers in order to attract new businesses. And we said this would be an LRPC, whoopsie. There we go, LRPC/SEGCO, but we need to define which one should be the lead. And this talks about looking at basically ordinances, review development regulations, so ordinances.
I think this feels like LRPC takes the lead and
I agree.
SETCO is secondary.
Yep.
Kind of part and parcel of what LRPCs do.
Yep. Okay. Not hearing any disagreement at the moment. I'm going to keep moving. Refine the number of defined uses into broader category types, grouped by impacts and intensities for a more organic and nimbler commercial and mixed-use development. Review development regulations. Near term, LRPC, SEDCO.
I think it's the same
Yeah.
thing.
Mhm.
Like anything that starts out as,
Yes.
it's really ordinance based.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't want to slow things down here, but I guess the way SEDCO probably gets involved is that somebody will come in and say, look, I want to do this here. And that sometimes drives what we're doing with our ordinances too. So I think it's a toss-up, quite frankly.
Actually, on this one too, I was thinking, this is where SEDCO would probably come and say, hey, here are the uses we're seeing. Here's where we're seeing demand. Here's where we're seeing developing sort of ideas among the development community.
Right.
Can you incorporate this? Think about that. So it might be you're providing foundations for us, but I think that the heavy lifting of actually looking at the ordinances is us.
Yeah,
Yeah, that is correct.
we would, yeah, SEDCO would look to you guys to develop the ordinance, and usually the way Jay and I work is, we go back and forth and do that to
Yeah.
present to the two boards.
Okay.
Review this time.
But the heavy lifting goes to Jay for ordinance work.
No, to the committee. It's always the committee's effort. Review town policies, ordinances, and standards, including the growth management ordinance, to ensure there are no implements to desired types.
Impediments.
What did I say? Thank you. Yep. Keep you straight. To desired types of development. Again, we have LRPC, SEDCO.
It's LRPC.
Yeah.
RPC.
Given the other.
And come on, why isn't this thing starting to auto-populate? Bugger.
Happy and supportive partner.
Foster walkable mixed-use development patterns presented on growth and conservation map, which increases tax revenue and minimizes infrastructure costs compared to low-density decentralized development patterns recommended in the previous comprehensive plan.
That's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful, but that's basically looking at our ordinances and being sure we continue to do the mixed-use type rezoning work that we really did over the last 12, 14 years and are starting to see the right.
And Jay, I might add SEDCO to that one, just because I think we would comment on it.
Yeah.
But certainly not the lead.
Yeah.
As well as transportation.
Where would I get transportation? All right. Come back to me. There we go. Review and evaluate life safety codes related to both commercial and residential activities to ensure adequate provisions are in place given the varying development patterns and types throughout the community. Public safety and code.
Public safety.
Public.
Public.
Oh, boy. I'm trying. I got a club. Yikes. Yeah.
It's not like it's being broadcast anywhere.
Yeah, right. Yep. Not being recorded or anything.
Yeah.
It's not like old Scarborough could see it.
Yeah. What was the Zoom bomb everyone was worried
Oh,
about?
yeah,
We had
yeah.
our first one and it was staff. All right. Foster relationships between business community and Scarborough schools to provide career exploration opportunities for students as well as internships and local mentors. That sounds like
SEDCO.
that's a SEDCO lead, not a school board lead.
I think it's SEDCO.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Like it. All right. Good. Ensure an adequate labor force for local businesses by encouraging a variety of housing options.
Yeah, amen.
I wonder if SEDCO's, it's interesting we put SEDCO as the lead. That really is,
I think the issue there was really talking about
Yeah, I think without seeing the
articulating the
context.
relationship between the labor force and housing opportunities. And that's certainly something SEDCO can articulate.
I think housing.
But, to the extent developing policy or something like that,
Right.
that's probably coming out of the
Housing Alliance. or-
And
or something where-
LRPC
Yep.
actually has a role in that as well. I
But
think.
if with SEDCO as the lead, I think what,
Does Setco work at the behest of the council, or are they separate? Just as they-
We're separate, but the town is our single one
Yeah.
client.
Yeah.
So the town council were the incorporators of SEDCO.
Right.
So,
but SEDCO does have its own board,
yep,
Right,
fully
Appointed
funded
by
through
the
the
council.
town. But they have their own board that
Right.
sort of approves the use of those funds, so to speak,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Not the
Mhm.
mid-year.
but yes, we're directly related. We do something that the council doesn't like.
they hear
That's bad.
about it.
You get a phone call,
Yeah,
several phone calls.
that's the least of it.
Ensure that the land use regulations encourage attractive mixed-use centers that provide a complement of services to help companies attract and maintain workers.
Pick.
Let's go. Okay. Continue to evaluate additional revenue tools for the municipality, including working with MMA on local option taxes and increases in revenue sharing.
I'm gonna tell you, Tom's gonna want it to be SEDCO.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was gonna say so.
Psycho manager or
Yeah.
council? I think we sort of struggled with when we
Well,
put
we do
manager or
have a
council.
municipal liaison and I'm it.
I think that's where the lead needs to tie in others, and I feel like my sort of sense is where we're putting the second column of the other organization, is sort of
Right.
telling the lead organization, hey, here's someone else you're probably gonna want to talk to. It's not,
Right.
It's
all
not
right,
necessarily limiting them to
limiting.
that person.
That's my thought on it.
At a
So-
minimum, you have to reach out to.
Right.
Yeah.
Coordinate design details of several individual projects to reinforce a common brand and sense of place unique to Scarborough.
Yeah, that's SEDCO.
That's an interesting one out of context to really understand what we're saying, but
I was gonna say, that kind of gets back to the design standards that came up briefly. Where does that reside? Is that in the planning office, Jay, or? Yeah.
designs, yes, and that's where I said, sort of reading this out of context of the comp plan makes me wonder sort of how it's, because, right, just reading that sentence to me, I was like, why did we get to SEDCO and town manager? But it's in an
It's the plan.
infrastructure planning and capital planning, less about design, so
Okay.
under this column, so but we can certainly
That'd be my
just
only
take a
comment.
second look, just to be sure the context really makes sense here.
Yeah,
Um,
because it is really about design standards, and I think.
I didn't bring my
Right.
copy with me. Right, but I just, again, seeing that the column of infrastructure planning, capital planning tells me it's something different than design standards, even though it sounds very much like it
Right.
as we read it. Attract private sector investment by investing in quality service and infrastructure.
It's kind of set to its mission statement.
Continue to use the state TIF program to support economic development objectives. Just going to go ahead and jump right in on that one. Identify program and needed resources for new community center, including conceptual designs, preliminary budgets needed to inform the public prior to a referendum if needed. Is this community services? Is this and I know some of that work, this was obviously written before we had the community services. So this might be, yeah. So I guess I wondered, do we put this to the community to Tom to figure out where it heads next?
I would
Is
say
that
Tom.
town manager? There you go, Tom. That's funny. This is the first one that decided to auto-populate. Thanks.
And it auto-populated wrong.
And
Yep.
by
Yeah.
community center, does that mean downtown?
No, I think this
No.
was a rec center,
Okay.
an active place. Sorry, a building. Yeah. Gauge the interest for public-private partnership that could minimize construction costs and shorten completion time of new community center. All right, town. Again, that's sort of the conversation that
Already took place.
occurred, but complete an infrastructure investment strategy study for the town that evaluates construction, operation, maintenance, and rehabilitation costs for infrastructure in terms of resiliency and resource efficiency. So this is sort of resiliency planning, I think sustainability committee or conservation commission are probably the, though this is, well, this does seem to actually be more around our infrastructure, pipes and roads. So what is this comment say? Town manager. So I had somehow, I had all sorts of misspellings in there. I'm sure what that was intended to do. Who do
But
we
I
want
think that
to?
was in the section that really talked about infrastructure planning in
Yep.
general, which I believe was in the town manager's
Yeah,
bailiwick.
I think because it crosses transportation,
Right.
telecoms,
Public
sewage,
Works.
public works, yeah.
Right,
investments.
right.
Yeah, the
And
Conservation
it-
Commission's not
Yeah.
gonna be able to do.
Exactly,
Exactly.
exactly,
So there's gonna be a lot of people to talk to on this thing.
yeah.
Just some ideas for Tom to, many more meetings for him to go to.
Yeah.
He'll love that.
Just keep signing them up.
That's right.
You get a text alert every time.
Except he gets to distribute all the work back out. so.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, hang on, it's coming your
That's
way.
right. Let's see. So evaluate options for bringing extreme high-speed broadband internet to Scarborough. This field town manager, is Sedco involved here?
We are, but it starts at the
Starts with
manager,
Tom?
yeah, because it's,
Oops.
yes.
Town
High speed.
Extreme.
Yeah, we were
Yeah,
trying to
we don't want to
distinguish.
mess around, pal.
Yeah,
There are companies bringing fiber optic in already.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Just a small section.
Yeah.
Didn't the state get a chunk of money off the infrastructure bill too?
Yes.
For
Yes.
high-speed internet?
But we won't see it.
We won't have to worry.
Right.
I doubt it's gonna be rural.
Yeah.
It's gonna be those parts of the state that really don't have anything, so,
It's gonna be
which
fun.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Consider partnerships with private providers as well as investments in municipally funded network.
That's back, I think that was related to the
Infrastructure planning, yeah.
High-speed internet.
Yep. Improve network design by requiring street connectivity when new development is being proposed during the development review process.
Planning board, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we do have those provisions in there. It's a matter of,
It feels like planning board and LRPC are number two, or planning board first, what I'd say. And then LRPC is in the next.
yeah, and it might be, again, where the planning board does mostly development review is sort of looking at, okay, we have provisions, how come, what's lacking, and then kicking it to long rangers to say, hey, could you help us work on this type of thing?
And it's listed as ongoing, so,
Mhm.
we've been doing that all
Yeah.
along, just, I think when you see these things, this is at saying, well, let's formalize that process a little bit more.
One question that I would have here is there ever have you ever seen a situation where the planning board actually requested an advisory opinion from the transportation committee on an item? And if not,
Yeah.
should they have?
It's about that process, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, is
it
that something we
usually
should
kind of
consider?
works the other way, that we get requests for advisory opinions. I don't think there's a problem looking at the other way.
No, you could look at it both
The planning
ways, but
board
I'm just
has-
saying that you
yeah.
get.
Yeah,
So I know the planning board has requested opinions from Conservation Commission.
Conservation Commission.
Conservation.
but we haven't ever,
I don't know.
I don't think we've ever kicked it. So I will just say on the Downs traffic movement permit, there was a joint workshop with
Yep.
planning board
Yep.
and transportation.
Yep.
I'd say that's probably the closest, and maybe that's sort of that started that type of relationship you're talking about. But haven't ever formally requested a advisory opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just looking at it from the standpoint that if in fact there was a situation where there was a lot of maybe citizen
Mhm.
concern or something because either the size of a project or the traffic impacts on a particular project, if they would ever consider requesting input from the Transportation Committee to just to provide an opinion.
I think the answer to that is we would, but we also get traffic advisory information from our consultants. If we have a question about the traffic impact on a development that's coming forward,
Yeah.
the applicant has to provide a traffic
And
impact
Yeah, and
analysis.
having sat on the
So-
planning board for many years, I appreciate that. But I also think that it's not always that the planning board fully understands everything else that's happening that the Transportation Committee is involved with, that hasn't come in front of the board yet. That's my
Yeah,
only
we
thought.
tend to be the last person, the last group in the line.
So I think the place that might be slightly different might be with the master plans or something like that. I think on an individual project, maybe not, but to the extent that you receive the Downs master plan and you think, I'd like to know what Transportation Committee thinks of that. That makes sense.
The other thing I'm thinking too is, does that mean that we should have a LRPC liaison to the Transportation Committee?
You do.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. I mean, you know better than
My reading of this is when you see it's to develop something, I always think the planning board is dealing with what, as you just said, the last
Where
person
the-
in the line of
yeah.
development.
Right. I mean,
I would
that's
say transportation committee on this, honestly.
as the lead.
Right, yeah.
So what creates difficulty for the planning board is because so many folks have looked at it, by the time it gets to us, it's difficult for us to say, go back to the beginning and take a
Just
look at
focusing on the
it.
semantics, it says
That's what I was-
when new development is being proposed during the development review process, which is
That's the
Literally-
planning board's process.
literally the
Yeah.
planning board's
Correct.
charge. I do agree that Transportation Committee should be involved in kind of longer term policymaking around that.
Right, and I guess that would be where when I sort of started out by saying, this would be if the planning board sees, you know what? There's a weakness in our ordinance, hey, someone else take a look at it.
Jay,
Yeah,
transportation,
yep. Come on, come on. All right. Continue to develop trails where possible to better connect destinations and neighborhoods while creating opportunities for residents to stay active. So transportation, community. It's funny that that's.
Yeah, what is that, do that?
I don't know. Anyway, so we had transportation, community services, and the rec advisory board. I will say, I do know that community services right now has an RFP out for an open space plan, and part of that, they're trying to look at connectivity of open spaces. So maybe this is one it's really sort of starting to happen, but ask community services to think about this as part of that project.
Yeah, I agree. As a secondary one, I'm just thinking, should conservation committee be the whatever, column L or whatever that's one.
I would almost think them at the land trust might be a good, good folks to be involved, or at least part of the conversation as a starting point anyway. There may be others as it goes along. All right, connect Oak Hill and Downs connect Oak Hill and the Downs into a viable downtown as described in a Downtown for Scarborough adopted November 2018. So transportation as the lead, with LRPC helping, LRPC,
I think it's long range planning, honestly, but obviously transportation makes perfect sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Give me all the other ones.
I'm almost wondering if it's the other way around.
Yeah, well, it's context, I think, is important in the whole comp plan too.
So this is under review, development, regulation,
Yes.
infrastructure planning.
Gotcha. Yeah,
We're happy with where we're at right now.
I'm okay with
We
that.
can always can always look at it deeper when we all start to do our work and say, maybe not. All right. Continue to implement complete street policies adopted by the town in 2016 when considering new road, streets, or upgrades to existing infrastructure. So oftentimes when the town has a road improvement project, we bring it to the transportation committee to help us, as we're rebuilding. Gorham Road's a good example. Hey, we're thinking to do it. So seems to me transportation, but I'll.
Yeah. Of course. I think if we didn't have a complete streets policy and we wanted to develop one, then it would be LRPC.
Mhm.
But having had that, transportation implements the policy.
We generate the complete streets policy as it stands today.
I believe it did. Boy, it's 2016, so now I can't remember. I think I know transportation was heavily involved. I'm sure we sort of vetted it through long rangers, but I can't quite.
Yeah.
My recall on that one isn't.
Makes sense, though.
Institute shared parking by developing new parking standards to be adopted as part of zoning regulations to allow for sharing of parking resources when proposing a new development. So we do have some standards around this, but I think this is sort of taking a second scrub, another look at it. Probably to me more of a long rangers thing than a transportation
It
thing.
really gets, it's parking, it really gets to
Right.
its land use planning.
Yep.
Yeah.
No way we're at the end.
Wow.
No way. Come on. No. Really?
We're out of here at 9:15.
What happened? Karen, I did say when we're on the call that we had about 54 to go. Yeah, we were at 30. Yeah, holy smokes.
You guys are good.
Make sure you say.
Yes.
I know, we had a moment of pause yesterday. We did save that,
Yeah.
your notes from last time, didn't we?
All right.
I got it in the minutes in case it doesn't.
All right.
Good for you, Eric.
All right, so we will, just what I see as next steps, and we've talked about this a few times, so we'll go back through, take all the leads, break them out into the various committee reports, send out an email to the chair of each committee and the council liaison and say, okay, long rangers, we've gone through, we've broken down the comp plan, here's what we see as falls in your wheelhouse, please review, tell us, your thoughts. If we're way off base, if there's any they think, no way, we don't want to deal with this, find someone else, we'll deal with that. And then we'll let the committee start to roll and come up with their priorities and identify resources needed. And of course, council's going to influence that because there's lots of priorities at the town, so we need to balance them.
Right.
So
And everything doesn't have to happen this year either, so.
that's
you know.
it's a- we got 10 to 12 years of implementation. Oh, speaking of which, to take a quick diversion, I did get some email updates from the state on their review. I thought I was actually supposed to hear from them by November 28th. I'll have to go back. Basically, they got like 4 or 5 comp plans all at once. So he's like, I'm going to miss some deadlines, just fine. So I expect to hear back pretty soon from them. So our first work in the new year might actually be going and looking at what the state's comments back to us are. I expect we're going to get something. I know, sort of typical, and we'll see what, if any, additional work we need to do. So I just popped in my mind, so I said it.
Okay, great. So the one thing we might ask everybody to do specifically is the LRPC has a lot of statements in their category. So you might want to take a look at the ones that were segmented for LRPC and make sure you're definitely comfortable with all of those. And you can start thinking about if there's anybody else you want to have involved.
Yeah, I would say, Mr. Chairman, for the January meeting, I think it would be helpful to look at the LRPC named tasks and just have that review in common. If we could get that maybe a little bit in advance, we can take a look at it before we talk about it here.
I think you have it.
Well, we'll
send it out again.
go and we'll
Yeah, we-
refine it with what we
Exactly, and
just
then we
did.
just got to merge in the.
Yeah.
we've just-
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just speaking of January, I was just thinking first Friday in January is probably pretty close to after we've all been out for a week or wait. So maybe, do we mind trying to find a time, either sort of mid-month to meet? Is that going to be okay with folks? And do we want to do that looking at our phones right now, or would an email chain to figure out a date be best?
A date for what? Pardon me.
I was talking about moving the January meeting, since the first Friday is probably right after, I know I'll be out at least a week, and then just trying to get my mind wrapped around what we're doing.
Okay, let's look at calendars now.
All right.
January
second
7th is the
Friday.
first, and that would be the 14th. January 14th is the second Friday.
I propose we move it to then, Karen, January 14th.
Say
Okay.
that, what-
She was good with January 15th. That's what I heard.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. We will, yes, sir.
All right, before we close the meeting, if I could, just a quick update on the transportation committee. Several things. We have a meeting coming up. We did not hold a meeting in November. We are having a meeting on the 7th. We're going to be looking at several things. One is the recent update on the east-west corridor, coming off the main turnpike heading up towards Gorham.
The Gorham connector,
The
whatever.
Gorham connector, so there's going to be some discussion on that. We'll also be looking at revamping the transportation impact fees because of the changes that are going on. And the last thing we're looking at is some of the changes that is coming about over the next 5 years, let's say, because of the Downs recent traffic movement permit. So those are the major items that we've got coming up over the next several months.
And
So-
if you do have a few minutes, you may want to speed watch the council workshop that was Wednesday
Yeah.
on the connector.
Yep.
They did talk about sort of a proposed alignment, and it looks like things are going to kick into high gear starting in January.
Yeah.
Kick into high gear as far as planning goes. or
Correct,
discussing? Okay.
correct.
Turnpike Authority is- Sorry.
Sorry, Karen and Jay, can someone send the link to that Wednesday night?
I absolutely will, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and like I said, you can speed watch it. They finally talked about the alignment towards the very end of it, although it's only with their red pointer.
And they did, just so you know, they don't show the alignment. They certainly talk about sort of endpoints.
Yeah.
They did mention within the next 4 to 6 weeks, if I had to guess, 6 to 8 weeks, let me put it that way. I think we will see the official alignment that they're looking at with the right of way laid out and everything. So it is definitely forthcoming.
Yeah.
So that'll be a discussion for us as well.
Could I ask you to send me the sheet that we just worked on? So that,
The spreadsheet?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna
okay,
recalibrate it and send it back out.
yeah, because I was hoping at the transportation committee meeting to try to help update a little bit on some of the items coming our way.
Right.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get that done for Tuesday.
If I could update a little bit on the planning board, we received a sketch, actually a site analysis and inventory for Beach Ridge Speedway.
What does it include?
It just really takes a look at what the soil is, and we sent it back for additional information because there are some concerns that there may be things buried there that we don't know about.
Literally.
And literally, because it
Fires and-
turns out that a lot of people brought their loved ones' ashes in to be buried in the infield. So that's raised some questions in how you kind of memorialize
Yes.
we've made a suggestion on what they can do, but it's going to be.
Sorry.
It is going to be an issue, but they're taking a look at a total of 1.5 million square feet of developable land, of which about 1.2 million could be a warehouse or construction. And
It is zoned industrial.
it's owned in industrial. There are not going to be thousands of houses there, in spite of what sometimes there are rumors out there, but it is owned industrial. And we've already taken a look at the sketch plan for IDEX in the Innovation District. So there's some large activities going on out there.
Just a suggestion to the chair on the agenda, that maybe there be an agenda item for committee reports that becomes part of the normal agenda.
That'd be nice.
I second that. That sounds great.
And I have an update on my own. You may have noticed I did not chime in when we were talking about January dates. This will be my last LRPC meeting. My term is ending, and I've decided after almost 8 years to at least take a break. Going back to my planning board time, it's been almost 15 years. And I really enjoyed being involved and appreciated working with everybody. So you'll get some
Thank
fresh
you
blood
very
hopefully
much.
soon.
Yeah,
Thank
you.
Thank you for your service.
Absolutely. It's been great.
Corey, are you going back to the planning board?
Great
No,
question, Robin.
I
No,
don't think that's what
seriously,
Rachel just leaned over for.
I do, I will be at some point looking for opportunities to be involved with the town in some way to serve. So I'm not leaving town, at least as far as I know. So, but
Enjoy it.
yeah,
Thank
you.
The wife on that one.
yeah,
You deserve it.
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you very much, Go. I think you started on the planning board just before I started in town, or maybe right at, I've
Right
been
around-
working
right.
down about 14, 15 years. And so, yeah, it's going to be,
It's amazing.
Yeah,
I very much have learned a lot from you over the time. So very much appreciate all your
thank you.
dedication to the town for sure.
Thanks.
It's been a pleasure for me as well. We've worked together for a while, so
That's right.
it's been really
Planning
nice.
board when I started on the planning board, Susan August was the chair, and so I wish her all the best too.
Mhm. You'll be missed.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I didn't see any public out there.
No
so-
public out there on Zoom or in the
Allison
room.
was.
She was, but she left us.
Okay. Any closing comments? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.